Book 5 of the Analects of Confucius, translated by William Jennings. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Book 5. A Disciple and the Golden Rule, Miscellaneous. The master pronounced Gong Ye Chang, a disciple, to be a marriageable person, for, although lying bound in criminal fetters, he had committed no crime, and he gave him his own daughter to wife. Of Nan Rong, a disciple, he observed that in a state where the government was well conducted, he would not be passed over in its appointments; and in one where the government was ill conducted, he would evade punishment and disgrace. And he caused his elder brother's daughter to be given in marriage to him. Of Tsz Chian, a disciple, he remarked, "A superior man indeed is the like of him. But had there been none of superior quality in Lu, how should this man have attained to his excellence?" Tsz kung asked, "What of me, then?" "You," replied the master, "you are a receptacle." "Of what sort?" said he. "One for high and sacred use," was the answer. Some one having observed of Yen Yung that he was good-natured towards others, but that he lacked the gift of ready speech, the master said, "What need of that gift? To stand up before men and pour forth a stream of glib words is generally to make yourself obnoxious to them. I know not about his good-naturedness, but at any rate what need of that gift?" When the master proposed that Ch'i Tiao Kai should enter the government service, the latter replied, "I can scarcely credit it." The master was gratified. "Good principles are making no progress," once exclaimed the master. "If I were to take a raft and drift about on the sea, would Tsz lu, I wonder, be my follower there?" That disciple was delighted at hearing the suggestion, whereupon the master continued, "He surpasses me in his love of deeds of daring. But he does not in the least grasp the pith of my remark." In reply to a question put to him by Mang Wu respecting Tsz lu, as to whether he might be called good-natured towards others, the master said, "I cannot tell." But, on the question being put again, he answered, "Well, in an important state he might be entrusted with the management of the military levies, but I cannot answer for his good nature." "What say you then of Yen Yu?" As for Yen, he replied, "In a city of 1,000 families, or in a secondary fief, he might be charged with the governorship, but I cannot answer for his good-naturedness." "Take Tsz hua then, what of him?" "Tsz hua," said he, "with the cincture girt upon him, standing as attendant at court, might be charged with the addressing of visitors and guests, but as to his good-naturedness I cannot answer." Addressing Tsz kung, the master said, "Which of the two is ahead of the other, yourself or Hui?" "How shall I dare," he replied, "even to look at Hui? Only let him hear one particular, and from that he knows 10, whereas I, if I hear one, may from it know 2." "You are not a match for him, I grant you," said the master. "You are not his match." Tsai Yu, a disciple, used to sleep in the daytime. Said the master, "One may hardly carve rotten wood, or use a trowel to the wall of a manure yard. In his case, what is the use of reprimand?" "My attitude towards a man in my first dealings with him," he added, "was to listen to his professions and to trust to his conduct. My attitude now is to listen to his professions and to watch his conduct. My experience with Tsai Yu has led to this change." "I have never seen," said the master, "a man of inflexible firmness." Some one thereupon mentioned Shen Ch'eng, a disciple. "Ch'eng," said he, "is wanton. Where do you get at his inflexibleness?" Tsz kung made the remark, "That which I do not wish others to put upon me, I also wish not to put upon others." "Nay," said the master, "you have not got so far as that." The same disciple once remarked, "There may be access so as to hear the master's literary discourses, but when he is treating of human nature and the way of heaven, there may not be such success." Tsz-lu, after once hearing him upon some subject, and feeling himself as yet incompetent to carry into practice what he had heard, used to be apprehensive, only lest he should hear the subject revived. Tsz-kung asked how it was that K'ung Wan had come to be so styled Wan, the talented. The Master's answer was, because, though a man of an active nature, he was yet fond of study, and he was not ashamed to stoop to put questions to his inferiors. Respecting Tsz ch'an, the Master said that he had 4 of the essential qualities of the superior man. In his own private walk he was humble-minded. In serving his superiors he was deferential. In his looking after the material welfare of the people he was generously kind. And in his exaction of public service from the latter he was just. Speaking of Yen Ping, he said, he was one who was happy in his mode of attaching men to him. However long the intercourse, he was always deferential to them. Referring to Tsang Wan, he asked, "What is to be said of this man's discernment? This man with his tortoise house, with the pillar heads and posts bedizened with scenes of hail and mire." Tsz chang put a question relative to the chief minister of Chu, Tsz wan. He said, 3 times he became chief minister, and on none of these occasions did he betray any sign of exaltation. 3 times his ministry came to an end, and he showed no sign of chagrin. He used without fail to inform the new minister as to the old mode of administration. What say you of him?" "That he was a loyal man," said the Master. "But was he a man of fellow feeling?" said the disciple. "Of that I am not sure," he answered. "How am I to get at that?" The disciple went on to say, "After the assassination of the Prince of Ch'i by the officer Cui, the latter's fellow official Cheng Wan, who had 60 teams of horses, gave up all and turned his back upon him. On coming to another state, he observed, 'There are here characters somewhat like that of our minister Cui,' and he turned his back upon them. Proceeding to a certain other state, he had occasion to make the same remark, and left. What say you of him?" "That he was a pure-minded man," answered the Master. "But was he a man of fellow feeling?" urged the disciple. "Of that I am not sure," he replied. "How am I to get at that?" Chi Wan was one who thought 3 times over a thing before he acted. The Master hearing this of him, observed, "Twice would have been enough." Of Ning Wu the Master said that when matters went well in the state he used to have his wits about him, but when they went wrong he lost them. His intelligence might be equalled, but not his witlessness. Once, when the Master lived in the state of Ch'in, he exclaimed, "Let me get home again! Let me get home! My school children are wild and impetuous. Though they are somewhat accomplished, and perfect in one sense in their attainments, yet they know not how to make nice discriminations." Of Po yi and Shu qi, he said, "By the fact of their not remembering old grievances, they gradually did away with resentment." Of Wei Zheng, he said, "Who calls him straightforward? A person once begged some vinegar of him, and he begged it from a neighbor, and then presented him with it." "Fine speech," said he, "and studied mien, and superfluous show of deference, of such things Tso Chiu ming was ashamed. I too am ashamed of such things. Also of hiding resentment felt towards an opponent and treating him as a friend, of this kind of thing he was ashamed, and so too am I." Attended once by the 2 disciples Yen Yuan and Tsz lu, he said, "Come now, why not tell me, each of you, what in your hearts you are really after?" "I should like," said Tsz lu, "for myself and my friends and associates, carriages and horses, and to be clad in light furs, nor would I mind much if they should become the worse for wear." "And I should like," said Yen Yuan, "to live without boasting of my abilities, and without display of meritorious deeds." Tsz lu then said, "I should like, sir, to hear what your heart is set upon." The Master replied, "It is this: in regard to old people, to give them quiet and comfort; In regard to friends and associates, to be faithful to them. In regard to the young, to treat them with fostering affection and kindness." On one occasion the Master exclaimed, "Ah, 'tis hopeless! I have not yet seen the man who can see his errors, so as inwardly to accuse himself." "In a small cluster of houses there may well be," said he, "some whose integrity and sincerity may compare with mine, but I yield to none in point of love of learning." [Footnote 10: An important state. Literally, a state of 1,000 war chariots. [Footnote 11: A secondary fief. Literally, a house of 100 war chariots. [Footnote 12: Zi a great statesman of Confucius' time. [Footnote 13: School children is a familiar way of speaking of his disciples in their hearing.] End of Book 5. Recording by Li Jing. Book 6 of the Analects of Confucius, translated by William Jennings. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Book 6. More characteristics, wisdom, philanthropy. Of Ran Yung, a disciple, the Master said, "Yung might indeed do for a prince." On being asked by this Ran Yung his opinion of a certain individual, the Master replied, "He is passable, impetuous though." "But," argued the disciple, "if a man habituate himself to a reverent regard for duty, even while in his way of doing things he is impetuous, in the oversight of the people committed to his charge, is he not passable? If, on the other hand, he habituate himself to impetuosity of mind, and show it also in his way of doing things, is he not then over impetuous?" "You are right," said the Master. When the Duke Ai inquired which of the disciples were devoted to learning, Confucius answered him, "There was one Yan Hui who loved it, a man whose angry feelings towards any particular person he did not suffer to visit upon another, a man who would never fall into the same error twice. Unfortunately his allotted time was short and he died, and now his like is not to be found. I have never heard of one so devoted to learning." While Tsz hwa, a disciple, was away on a mission to Ch'i, the disciple Ran Yu, on behalf of his mother, applied for some grain. "Give her 3 pecks," said the Master. He applied for more. "Give her 8 then." Ran gave her 50 times that amount. The Master said, "When Tsz hwa went on that journey to Ch'i, he had well-fed steeds yoked to his carriage, and was arrayed in light furs. I have learned that the superior man should help those whose needs are urgent, not help the rich to be more rich." When Yuan Si became prefect under him, he gave him 900 measures of grain, but the prefect declined to accept them. "You must not," said the Master. "May they not be of use to the villages and hamlets around you?" Speaking of Ran Yung again, the Master said, "If the offspring of a speckled ox be red in color, and horned, even though men may not wish to take it for sacrifice, would the spirits of the hills and streams reject it?" Adverting to Hui again, he said, "For 3 months there would not be in his breast one thought recalcitrant against his feeling of good will towards his fellow men. The others may attain to this for a day or for a month, but there they end." When asked by Ki K'ang whether Tsz lu was fit to serve the government, the Master replied, "Tsz lu is a man of decision. What should prevent him from serving the government?" Asked the same question respecting Tsz kung and Ran Yu, he answered similarly, pronouncing Tsz kung to be a man of perspicacity, and Ran Yu to be one versed in the polite arts. When the head of the Chi family sent for Min Tsz k'ien to make him governor of the town of Bi, that disciple said, "Politely decline for me. If the offer is renewed, then indeed I shall feel myself obliged to go and live on the further bank of the Wen." Bo Niu had fallen ill, and the Master was inquiring after him. Taking hold of his hand held out from the window, he said, It is taking him off. Alas, his appointed time has come. Such a man, and to have such an illness." Of Hui again, "A right worthy man indeed was he, with his simple wooden dish of rice and his one gourd basin of drink, away in his poor back lane, in a condition too grievous for others to have endured, he never allowed his cheery spirits to droop. Ay, a right worthy soul was he." "It is not," Yen Yu once apologized, "that I do not take pleasure in your doctrines. It is that I am not strong enough." The Master rejoined, "It is when those who are not strong enough have made some moderate amount of progress that they fail and give up. But you are now drawing your own line for yourself." Addressing Tsz hiŠ, the Master said, "Let your scholarship be that of gentlemen, and not like that of common men." When Tsz yu became governor of Wu ch'en, the Master said to him, "Do you find good men about you?" The reply was, "There is Tan t'ai Mieh ming, who, when walking eschews bypaths, and who, unless there be some public function, never approaches my private residence." "Mang Chih fan," said the Master, "is no sounder of his own praises. During a stampede he was in the rear, and as they were about to enter the city gate, he whipped up his horses and said, 'Twas not my daring made me lag behind. My horses would not go." Obiterdicta of the Master: "Whoever has not the glib utterance of the priest T'o, as well as the handsomeness of Prince Ch'ao of Sung, will find it hard to keep out of harm's way in the present age. Who can go out but by that door? Why walks no one by these guiding principles? Where plain naturalness is more in evidence than polish, we have the man from the country. Where polish is more in evidence than naturalness, we have the town scribe. It is when naturalness and polish are equally evident that we have the ideal man. The life of a man is his rectitude. Life without it, such may you have the good fortune to avoid. They who know it are not as those who love it, nor they who love it as those who rejoice in it. That is half the fruition of their love for it. To the average man, and those above the average, it is possible to discourse on higher subjects. To those from the average downwards, it is not possible." Fan Ch'i put a query about wisdom. The Master replied, "To labor for the promoting of righteous conduct among the people of the land; to be serious in regard to spiritual beings, and to hold aloof from them. This may be called wisdom." To a further query about philanthropy, he replied, "Those who possess that virtue find difficulty with it at first, success later. Men of practical knowledge," he said, "find their gratification among the rivers of the lowland. Men of sympathetic social feeling find theirs among the hills. The former are active and bustling, the latter calm and quiet. The former take their day of pleasure, the latter look to length of days." Alluding to the states of Ch'i and Lu, he observed that Ch'i by one change might attain to the condition of Lu, and that Lu by one change might attain to good government. An exclamation of the Master, satirizing the times when old terms relating to government were still used while bereft of their old meaning: "A quart and not quart! Quart indeed! Quart indeed!" Tsai Wo, a disciple, put a query. Said he, "Suppose a philanthropic person were told, 'There's a fellow creature down in the well,' would he go down after him?" "Why should he really do so?" answered the Master. "The good man or a superior man might be induced to go, but not to go down. He may be misled, but not befooled." "The superior man," said he, "with his wide study of books, and hedging himself round by the rules of propriety, is not surely, after all that, capable of overstepping his bounds." Once when the Master had had an interview with Nan Tsz, which had scandalized his disciple Tsz lu, he uttered the solemn adjuration, "If I have done aught amiss, may Heaven reject me! May Heaven reject me!" "How far-reaching," said he, "is the moral excellence that flows from the constant mean! It has for a long time been rare among the people." Tsz kung said, "Suppose the case of one who confers benefits far and wide upon the people, and who can, in so doing, make his bounty universally felt, how would you speak of him? Might he be called philanthropic?" The Master exclaimed, "What a work for philanthropy! He would require indeed to be a sage. He would put into shade even Yao and Shun. Well, a philanthropic person, desiring for himself a firm footing, is led on to give one to others. Desiring for himself an enlightened perception of things, he is led on to help others to be similarly enlightened. If one could take an illustration coming closer home to us than yours, that might be made the starting point for speaking about philanthropy." [Footnote 14: When Yuan Si became prefect under him, he gave him 900 measures of grain, but the prefect declined to accept them. At this time Confucius was criminal judge in his native state of Lu. Yuan Si had been a disciple. The commentators add that this was the officer's proper salary, and that he did wrong to refuse it. [Footnote 15: About the constant mean. The doctrine afterwards known by that name, and which gave its title to a Confucian treatise.] End of Book 6. Recording by Li Jing. Book 7 of the Analects of Confucius, translated by William Jennings. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Book 7. Characteristics of Confucius. An incident. Said the Master, "I, as a transmitter and not an originator, and as one who believes in and loves the ancients, venture to compare myself with our old Peng." Footnote 16. Regarding transmitter, in reference to his editing the 6 classics of his time. "What find you indeed in me? A quiet brooder and a memorizer, a student never satiated with learning, an unwearied monitor of others. The things which weigh heavily upon my mind are these: failure to improve in the virtues, failure in discussion of what is learned, inability to walk according to knowledge received as to what is right and just, inability also to reform what has been amiss." In his hours of recreation and refreshment, the Master's manner was easy and unconstrained, affable and winning. Once he exclaimed, "Alas, I must be getting very feeble! 'Tis long since I have had a repetition of the dreams in which I used to see the Duke of Chow." Footnote 17, regarding the Duke of Chow. This was one of his beloved ancients, famous for what he did in helping to found the dynasty of Chow, a man of great political wisdom, a scholar also, and poet. It was the dream of Confucius' life to restore the country to the condition in which the Duke of Chow left it. "Concentrate the mind," said he, "upon the good way. Maintain firm hold upon virtue. Rely upon philanthropy. Find recreation in the arts." Footnote 18. These were 6 in number, viz., ceremonial, music, archery, horsemanship, language, and calculation. "I have never withheld instruction from any, even from those who have come for it with the smallest offering. No subject do I broach, however, to those who have no eager desire to learn. No encouraging hint do I give to those who show no anxiety to speak out their ideas. Nor have I anything more to say to those who, after I have made clear one corner of the subject, cannot from that give me the other 3. If the Master was taking a meal, and there were any in mourning beside him, he would not eat to the full. On one day on which he had wept, on that day he would not sing. Addressing his favorite disciple, he said, "To you only and myself it has been given to do this: to go when called to serve, and to go back into quiet retirement when released from office." Tsz lu, hearing the remark, said, "But if, sir, you had the handling of the army of one of the greater states, whom would you have associated with you in that case?" The Master answered, Not the one who'll rouse the tiger, not the one who'll wade the He, not the man who can die with no regret. He must be one who should watch over affairs with apprehensive caution, a man fond of strategy, and of perfect skill and effectiveness in it. [Footnote 19: About the army of one of the greater states. Literally, 3 forces. Each force consisted of 12,500 men, and 3 of such forces were the equipment of a greater state. As to wealth, he remarked, if wealth were an object that I could go in quest of, I should do so even if I had to take a whip and do groom's work. But seeing that it is not, I go after those objects for which I have a liking. Among matters over which he exercised great caution were times of fasting, war, and sickness. When he was in the state of Ch'i, and had heard the ancient Shao music, he lost all perception of the taste of his meat. "I had no idea," said he, "that music could have been brought to this pitch." In the course of conversation, Yen Yu said, "Does the Master take the part of the Prince of Wei?" "Ah, yes," said Tsz kung, "I will go and ask him that." On going in to him, that disciple began, "What sort of men were Bo Erh and Shu Qi?" "Worthies of the olden time," the Master replied. "Had they any feelings of resentment?" was the next question. "Their aim and object," he answered, "was that of doing the duty which every man owes to his fellows, and they succeeded in doing it. What room further for feelings of resentment?" The questioner on coming out said, "The Master does not take his part." "With a meal of coarse rice," said the Master, "and with water to drink, and my bent arm for my pillow, even thus I can find happiness. Riches and honors without righteousness are to me as fleeting clouds." "Give me several years more to live," said he, "and after 50 years' duty of the Book of Changes, I might come to be free from serious error." The Master's regular subjects of discourse were the books of the Odes and history, and the upkeeping of the rules of propriety. On all of these he regularly discoursed. The Duke of Sheh questioned Tsz lu about Confucius, and the latter did not answer. Hearing of this, the Master said, "Why did you not say, 'He is a man with a mind so intent on his pursuits that he forgets his food, and finds such pleasure in them that he forgets his troubles, and does not know that old age is coming upon him?'" "As I came not into life with any knowledge of it," he said, "and as my likings are for what is old, I busy myself in seeking knowledge there." Strange occurrences, exploits of strength, deeds of lawlessness, references to spiritual beings, such like matters the Master avoided in conversation. "Let there," he said, "be 3 men walking together. From that number I should be sure to find my instructors. For what is good in them I should choose out and follow, and what is not good I should modify." On one occasion he exclaimed, "Heaven begat virtue in me. What can man do unto me?" To his disciples he once said, "Do you look upon me, my sons, as keeping anything secret from you? I hide nothing from you. I do nothing that is not manifest to your eyes, my disciples. That is so with me." 4 things there were which he kept in view in his teaching: scholarliness, conduct of life, honesty, faithfulness. "It is not given to me," he said, "to meet with a sage. Let me but behold a man of superior mind, and that will suffice. Neither is it given to me to meet with a good man. Let me but see a man of constancy, and it will suffice. It is difficult for persons to have constancy when they pretend to have that which they are destitute of, to be full when they are empty, to do things on a grand scale when their means are contracted." When the Master fished with hook and line, he did not also use a net. When out with his bow, he would never shoot at game in cover. "Some there may be," said he, "who do things in ignorance of what they do. I am not of these. There is an alternative way of knowing things, viz., to sift out the good from the many things one hears, and follow it. and to keep in memory the many things one sees. Pupils from Hushan were difficult to speak with. One youth came to interview the master, and the disciples were in doubt whether he ought to have been seen. "Why so much ado," said the master, "at my merely permitting his approach, and not rather at my allowing him to draw back? If a man have cleansed himself in order to come and see me, I receive him as such; but I do not undertake for what he will do when he goes away." "Is the philanthropic spirit far to seek indeed?" the master exclaimed. "I wish for it, and it is with me." The minister of crime in the state of Ch'in asked Confucius whether Duke Chao of Lu was acquainted with the proprieties, and he answered, "Yes, he knows them." When Confucius had withdrawn, the minister bowed to Wu Ma Chi, a disciple, and motioned to him to come forward. He said, "I have heard that superior men show no partiality. Are they too, then, partial? That prince took for his wife a lady of the Wu family, having the same surname as himself, and had her named Lady Tzu of Wu, the elder. If he knows the propriety, then who does not?" The disciple reported this to the master, who thereupon remarked, "Well for me! If I err in any way, others are sure to know of it." When the master was in company with any one who sang, and who sang well, he must needs have the song over again, and after that would join in it. "Although in letters," he said, "I may have none to compare with me, yet in my personification of the superior man, I have not as yet been successful." "A sage and a philanthropist? How should I have the ambition?" said he. "All that I can well be called is this: an insatiable student, an unwearied teacher. This and no more." "Exactly what we, your disciples, cannot by any learning manage to be," said Kung si Hwa. Once when the master was seriously ill, Tsz lu requested to be allowed to say prayers for him. "Are such available?" asked the master. "Yes," said he. "And the manual prayer says, 'Pray to the spirits above, and to those here below.'" "My praying has been going on a long while," said the master. "Lavish living," he said, "renders men disorderly. Miserliness makes them hard. Better, however, the hard than the disorderly. Again, the man of superior mind is placidly composed. The small-minded man is in a constant state of perturbation." The master was gentle, yet could be severe; had an overawing presence, yet was not violent; was deferential, yet easy. Book 7. Recording by Li Jing. Book 8 of the Analects of Confucius. Translated by William Jennings. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Sayings of Tsang. Sentences of the Master. Speaking of Tai Po, the Master said that he might be pronounced a man of the highest moral excellence. For he allowed the empire to pass by him onwards to a third heir, while the people, in their ignorance of his motives, were unable to admire him for so doing. "Without the proprieties," said the Master, "we have these results: for deferential demeanor, a worried one; for calm attentiveness, awkward bashfulness; for manly conduct, disorderliness; for straightforwardness, perversity. When men of rank show genuine care for those nearest to them in blood, the people rise to the duty of neighborliness and sociability. And when old friendships among them are not allowed to fall off, there will be a cessation of underhand practices among the people." The scholar Tsang was once unwell, and calling his pupils to him, he said to them, "Disclose to view my feet and my hands. What says the old? 'Act as from a sense of danger, with precaution and with care. As a yawning gulf overlooking, as on ice that scarce will bear.' At all times, my children, I know how to keep myself free from bodily harm." Again, during an illness of his, Meng Jing, an official, went to ask after him. The scholar had some conversation with him, in the course of which he said, "Doleful the cries of a dying bird, good the last words of a dying man." There are three points which a man of rank in the management of his duties should set store upon: a lively manner and deportment, banishing both severity and laxity; a frank and open expression of countenance, allied closely with sincerity; and a tone in his utterances utterly free from any approach to vulgarity and impropriety. As to matters of bowls and dishes, leave such things to those who are charged with the care of them. Another saying of the scholar Tsang: "I once had a friend who, though he possessed ability, would go questioning men of none, and though surrounded by numbers, would go with his questions to isolated individuals, who also, whatever he might have, appeared as if he were without it, and, with all his substantial acquirements, made as though his mind were mere blank, and when insulted would not retaliate. This was ever his way." Again he said, "The man that is capable of being entrusted with the charge of a minor on the throne, and given authority over a large territory, and who, during the important term of his superintendence, cannot be forced out of his position, is not such a superior man? That he is indeed." Again, "The learned official must not be without breadth and power of endurance. The burden is heavy, and the way is long." Suppose that he take his duty to his fellow men as his peculiar burden, is that not indeed a heavy one? And since only with death it is done with, is not the way long? Sentences of the Master: "From the Book of Odes we receive impulses; from the Book of the Rules, stability; from the Book on Music, refinement." [Footnote 20: Comparison of three of the classics, the Shih King, the Li Ji, and the Yue. The last is lost.] The people may be put into the way they should go, though they may not be put into the way of understanding it. The man who likes bravery, and yet groans under poverty, has mischief in him. So too has the misanthrope, groaning at any severity shown towards him. Even if a person were adorned with the gifts of the Duke of Chow, yet if he were proud and avaricious, all the rest of his qualities would not indeed be worth looking at. Not easily found is the man who, after 3 years' study, has failed to come upon some fruit of his toil. The really faithful lover of learning holds fast to the good way till death. He will not go into a state in which a downfall is imminent, nor take up his abode in one where disorder reigns. When the empire is well ordered, he will show himself; when not, he will hide himself away. Under a good government it will be a disgrace to him if he remain in poverty and low estate; under a bad one it would be equally disgraceful to him to hold riches and honors. If not occupying the office, devise not the policy. When the Professor Chih began his duties, how grand the finale of the first of the Odes used to be! How it rang in one's ears! I cannot understand persons who are enthusiastic and yet not straightforward, nor those who are ignorant and yet not attentive, nor again those folks who are simple-minded and yet untrue. Learn as if never overtaking your object, and yet as if apprehensive of losing it. How sublime was the handling of the empire by Shun and Yu! It was as nothing to them. How great was Yao as a prince! Was he not sublime? Say that heaven only is great, then was Yao alone after its pattern. How profound was he! The people could not find a name for him. How sublime in his achievements! How brilliant in his scholarly productions! Shun had for his ministers 5 men, by whom he ordered the empire. King Wu in his day stated that he had 10 men as assistants for the promotion of order. With reference to these facts, Confucius observed, "Ability is hard to find. Is it not so indeed? During the 3 years' interregnum between Yao and Shun, there was more of it than in the interval before this present dynasty appeared. There were, at this latter period, 1 woman and 9 men only." When 2/3 of the empire were held by King Wan, he served with that portion of the house of Yin. We speak of the virtue of the house of Chow, we may say, indeed, that it reached the pinnacle of excellence. "As to Yu," added the Master, "I can find no flaw in him. Living on meagre food and drink, yet providing to the utmost in his filial offerings to the spirits of the dead. Dressing in coarse garments, yet most elegant when vested in his sacrificial apron and coronet. Dwelling in a poor palace, yet exhausting his energies over those boundary ditches and watercourses. I can find no flaw in Yu." End of Book 8. Recording by Li Jing. Book 9 of the Analects of Confucius, translated by William Jennings. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. His favorite disciple's opinion of him. Topics on which the Master rarely spoke were advantage and destiny and duty of man to man. A man of the village of Ta-hsiang exclaimed of him, "A great man is Confucius, a man of extensive learning, and yet in nothing has he quite made himself a name." The Master heard of this, and mentioning it to his disciples, he said, "What then shall I take in hand? Shall I become a carriage driver, or an archer? Let me be a driver." "The sacrificial cap," he once said, "should, according to the rules, be of linen, but in these days it is of pure silk. However, as it is economical, I do as all do. The rule says, 'Make your bow when at the lower end of the hall,' but nowadays the bowing is down at the upper part. This is great freedom. And I, though I go in opposition to the crowd, bow when at the lower end." The Master barred 4 words. He would have no shalls, no musts, no certainty, no eyes. Once, in the town of Kwang, fearing that his life was going to be taken, the Master exclaimed, "King Wan is dead and gone, but is not Wan with you here? If Heaven be about to allow this Wan to perish, then they who survive its disease will get no benefit from it. But so long as Heaven does not allow it to perish, what can the men of Kwang do to me?" Footnote 21. Wan was the honorary appellation of the great sage and ruler whose praise is in the Shi Jing as one of the founders of the Chow dynasty, and the term represented civic talent and virtues, as distinct from Wu, the martial talent, the latter being the honorary title of his son and successor. Wan also often stands for literature and polite accomplishments. Here Confucius simply means, "If you kill me, you kill a sage." A high state official, after questioning Tsz kung, said, "Your master is a sage, then. How many and what varied abilities must be his?" The disciple replied, "Certainly Heaven is allowing him full opportunities of becoming a sage, in addition to the fact that his abilities are many and varied." When the Master heard of this, he remarked, "Does that high official know me? In my early years, my position in life was low, and hence my ability in many ways, though exercised in trifling matters. In the gentleman is there indeed such variety of ability? No." From this, the disciple Lau used to say, "'Twas a saying of the Master, 'At a time when I was not called upon to use them, I acquired my proficiency in the polite arts.'" "Am I, indeed," said the Master, "possessed of knowledge? I know nothing. Let a vulgar fellow come to me with a question. A man with an emptyish head, I may thrash out with him the matter from end to end, and exhaust myself in doing it." "Ah!" exclaimed he once, "the phoenix does not come, and no symbols issue from the river. May I not as well give up?" Whenever the Master met with a person in mourning, or with one in full dress cap and kirtle, or with a blind person, although they might be young persons, he would make a point of rising on their appearance, or, if crossing their path, would do so with quickened step. Once Yen Yuan exclaimed with a sigh, with reference to the Master's doctrines, "If I look up to them, they are ever the higher; if I try to penetrate them, they are ever the harder; if I gaze at them, as if before my eyes, lo, they are behind me. Gradually and gently the Master with skill lures men on. By literary lore he gave me breadth; by the rules of propriety he narrowed me down. When I desire respite, I find it impossible; and after I have exhausted my powers, there seems to be something standing straight up in front of me, and though I have the mind to make towards it, I make no advance at all." Once, when the Master was seriously ill, Tsz lu induced the other disciples to feign they were high officials acting in his service. During a respite from his malady, the Master exclaimed, "Ah, how long has Tsz lu's conduct been false! Whom should I delude, if I were to pretend to have officials under me, having none? Should I deceive Heaven? Besides, were I to die, I would rather die in the hands of yourselves, my disciples, than in the hands of officials. And though I should fail to have a grand funeral over me, I should hardly be left on my death on the public highway, should I?" Tsz kung once said to him, "Here is a fine gem. Would you guard it carefully in a casket and store it away, or seek a good price for it and sell it?" "Sell it indeed," said the Master. "That would I, but I should wait for the bidder." The Master protested he would "go and live among the 9 wild tribes." "A rude life," said some one. "How could you put up with it?" "What rudeness would there be," he replied, "if a superior man was living in their midst?" Once he remarked, "After I came back from Wei to Lu, the music was put right, and each of the festal odes and hymns was given its appropriate place and use." "Ah, which one of these following," he asked on one occasion, "are to be found exemplified in me: proper service rendered to superiors when abroad; duty to father and elder brother when at home; duty that shrinks from no exertion when dear ones die; and keeping free from the confusing effects of wine?" Standing once on the bank of a mountain stream, he said musingly, "Like this are those that pass away; no cessation, day or night." Other sayings: "Take an illustration from the making of a hill. A simple basketful is wanting to complete it, and the work stops; so I stop short. Take an illustration from the levelling of the ground. Suppose again just one basketful is left, when the work has so progressed. There I desist. I was Hui, was it not? Who, when I had given him his lesson, was the unflagging one. Alas for Hui, I saw him ever making progress. I never saw him stopping short. Blade, but no bloom; or else bloom, but no produce. Ay, that is the way with some. Reverent regard is due to youth. How know we what difference there may be in them in the future from what they are now? Yet when they have reached the age of 40 or 50, and are still unknown in the world, then indeed they are no more worthy of such regard. Can any do otherwise than assent to words said to them by way of correction? Only let them reform by such advice, and it will then be reckoned valuable. Can any be other than pleased with words of gentle suasion? Only let them comply with them fully, and such also will be accounted valuable. With those who are pleased without so complying, and those who assent but do not reform, I can do nothing at all. Give prominent place to loyalty and sincerity. Have no associates in study who are not advanced somewhat like yourself. When you have erred, be not afraid to correct yourself. It may be possible to seize and carry off the chief commander of a large army, but not possible so to rob one poor fellow of his will. One who stands, clad in hempen robe, the worse for wear, among others clad in furs of fox and badger, and yet unabashed. To Tsz lu that is it not? Tsz lu used always to be humming over the lines, From envy and enmity free, what deed doth he other than good?" "How should such a rule of life," asked the Master, "be sufficient to make any one good?" "When the year grows chilly, we know the pine and cypress are the last to fade. The wise escape doubt, the good-hearted trouble, the bold apprehension. Some may study side by side and yet be asunder when they come to the logic of things. Some may go on together in this latter course, but be wide apart in the standards they reach in it. Some again may together reach the same standard, and yet be diverse in weight of character. The blossom is out on the cherry tree, with a flutter on every spray. Dost think that my thoughts go not out to thee? Ah! why art thou far away?" Commenting on these lines, the Master said, "There can hardly have been much thought going out. What does distance signify?" Book 9 Recording by Li Jing